Okay, we're nailing down the processes that make your background screens bulletproof. Today, we're tackling something that drives HR pros nuts. It's access fees. These sneaky charges can jack up your screening costs, and if your vendor hasn't explained them, you're probably frustrated. But don't worry, we're going to make sense of this mess, have some fun here, and turn you into an expert who knows why fees happen and how to handle them. I hear it all the time from potential clients. Ken, our vendors killing us with fees. Why are there so many? First, shame on that vendor for not teaching you what's going on. Second, if you're shopping around to dodge fees, I've got news. Every legit screening company deals with them. They're not the bad guy, they're just part of the game. As the former chief operating of some major data provider now, and I've been doing this for a long time, let me break it down so you never get blindsided again. So what are access fees? They're charges from counties, states, and agencies for pulling the criminal records. Think of it like a toll for accessing the data highway. Only about 5% of US counties, roughly 150 out of 3,100, charge these fees. They're typically $1 to $50 per search. But state repositories, they're pricier. New York's statewide database hits you with a $95 per name fee. Michigan's sex offender registry does have fees and could cost up to $50. North Carolina used to charge by the page for court records. Pennies per page, but it added up. And they'd bill you 30 to 60 days later. Made it a nightmare to pass on costs. So screeners averaged it out and set a flat rate for North Carolina. These fees are real and they vary across the country. A client in Charlotte, North Carolina, came to us fuming about their vendor fees. They were hiring a ton of New York relocates. People moving south for that sweet Southern charm. All right? Every New York statewide search costs $95 per legal name. And with 30% of people using aliases, like maiden names, that's $95 for each name. Their vendors didn't explain why the bills were so high, just slapped on the fees. Turns out Charlotte's relocation boom meant more New York searches driving up their cost. Now, meanwhile, a client in Mississippi complained their fees were higher than a peer in Georgia. Why? Mississippi county courts like Hinds County often charge $25 to $35 for a search, while Georgia's Fulton County are mostly fee-free or under $10. It's not shady, it's just location. Location. Do they charge the fees? Now, here's where it gets trickier, especially for nonprofits or groups where volunteers pay for their own background screens. Imagine you're a youth league or church relying on volunteers. You ask them to cover their screening costs, which they gladly do, up front. But you haven't run the address history trace yet. You don't know where or which counties or fees you'll hit. So one volunteer gets a $25 screen with no fees. And another gets slapped with $125 because their alias is triggered, let's say, New York's $95 fee. They start talking to each other and one says, "Can you believe I paid $125? What a ripoff for that background screen." The other one says, "That's crazy. Mine was only $25. Suddenly your volunteers think you're unfair or somehow they're getting scammed. Now, we saw this with a nonprofit client whose volunteers nearly mutinied over price swings. So it's a real problem if you don't plan for it. So how do you master these access fees like a pro? Well, here's your game plan, including tips for volunteer-based groups. First, just demand transparency. Ask your vendor to break down the fees by county and state. If they can't, find someone who will, all right? Know your location. Understand the fee landscape where you operate. High New York fees in Charlotte because of relocation? Okay. Comes with the territory. Budget for those $95 hits. Low fees like Georgia? Hey, you're luckier. And then, so understand your location. Now, then manage volunteer costs if you have them. If volunteers pay, choose a strategy. Here's a couple. Flat rate, it's inclusive, all right? Charges to standard fee, say it's higher, $60, that covers AKAs and potential access fees. It's going to cost 60 to 100% more, but it keeps pricing consistent. And that sometimes is the goal. Volunteers won't grumble about variable cost, right? Then you could also potentially do split costs with a volunteer. Let's say volunteers pay a flat base rate like $40 for the screen, and your organization covers whatever's left, plus the access fees. A client of ours, a school, did this. They charged the volunteers $40 and then $9 plus the fees for the school. Okay, kept the volunteers happy, cost low, and the screens top notch. All right, so that's good. Beware no fees claimed. When someone says, oh, we don't charge fees, vendors saying fees included. Okay, they're most likely averaging the cost, meaning you might overpay. So they're taking all their fees, adding it to their pricing, and including it and telling you there are no fees, but they're in there. They're baking them into the price, betting they're going to come out ahead. Now, the screening business is literally a low margin business, so nobody's going to give freebies. All right, so this is your moment to shine in this area. Access fees are the cost of quality data, county and state records that keep your company safe. Don't let them scare you. Now, with your corporate HR pro or nonprofit volunteers, work with a vendor who educates you, not one who hides the ball. You're not just screening now, you're starting to build a fortress around your organization. Next, we're diving into how New York data shakes up your screens. It gets even stickier, so stick with me. You're gonna be unstoppable.